Hi, welcome for the first edition of Konnekt Talks 2. Today with Godwin we will be speaking about blockchain and how it is impacting the future of internet and its related implications. Godwin, thanks for accepting our invitation. I must say that Godwin was immediately available to discuss. He shares his passion over LinkedIn and other social media about blockchain. Perhaps we start a little bit, Godwin, with what blockchain, the implications and the functions of blockchain, because many people relate it with cryptocurrency, Bitcoin being the most popular, but it's not just about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. What other functions do you think that blockchain can serve the purpose for?
Well, I think what's important is to understand the building blocks of this technology.
Okay.
Because if we knew what it is fit for, one would say, well, let's have these applications out there. So one must understand the technology and then be creative in seeing how it is applied.
Okay.
The core aspects of the blockchain, which are extremely disruptive. I'm a person who has worked in the industry, in technology for over 25 years, and I've been blown away with this new technology, with the ideas behind it, and how it really gives us a new tool, a new way, a new technology in doing things, especially the aspect of trust.
Okay.
Which is incredible. It's an incredible way of enabling technology to be trusted, especially on an online world nowadays. So the building blocks are mainly this of being a distributed ledger, but most importantly is, I think the key aspects are that it ends up being an autonomous network. So whatever business you want to do on it, or whatever function you want to put on it, it's going to be autonomous. Nobody is going to be in control of it. And
you don't have control.
And I think this is something extremely disruptive and new, right? The fact that you trust that if nobody is in control of it, it's going to be done well, and that you can trust that things are going to happen the way people are saying it's going to happen. And I think
you're going to trust people you don't know.
Exactly. Which is key in today's world, which is in today's economy, where businesses are, multiple, huge distances apart, where it shouldn't really matter. But we still do business in a way that we didn't even know that it could be done any other way, in my opinion, that you don't use an intermediary. Everything is done using an intermediary nowadays. And this brings this opportunity of doing away with this intermediary. So that's a completely new concept. Now, how that can be applied, I think there are two ways to answer this. One is that it can be applied to many aspects of doing traditionally, with using an intermediary, by being creative and doing away with this intermediary. But what is maybe less said is the fact that not everything can be done without an intermediary. So blockchain technology will not be for everyone. Okay. Unfortunately, I believe, I've been seeing this very much, people want to jump on this bandwagon and want to say that we're doing blockchain without understanding the technology, and more importantly, thinking how this is going to help your business. One aspect, I'm a technologist myself, but one thing I've learned is that technology is there ideally, to serve a purpose, to serve businesses or functionality or whatever, but a real life problem, I call it, to serve a problem. You need to look at technology and see which one would be applied in the best way. Blockchain isn't always the answer.
Okay.
Right? But sometimes at the moment we're living this era where everybody wants to add blockchain. I've seen actually as a side note, there has been instances in the States where companies just added blockchain to their name. and they've seen their share price soar. They just added it to their name. So I think, unfortunately, this has been harming the technology itself.
Where do you think that blockchain isn't the answer?
Well, certainly, I think, as I said, this is something that will run autonomously. So, first, in order for this to work well, you need a large network, in my opinion, although there are various forms of operating this blockchain. There are what they call permissionless, which effectively mean a public blockchain or a private blockchain. I guess when it is a private blockchain, I think, in my opinion, it defeats the purpose, because effectively you are running then within a closed loop of trusted partners already, and therefore you don't necessarily need to then go to a blockchain in that case. I think a central database works better if you are within a trusted network, because that's why it's closed loop. Those people that can enter this network are trusted people. Of course, there are other aspects of the blockchain technology, which is the fact that it's distributed. It is highly available automatically in this way. Things that are features important in any way in technology, but there's a price to pay, because so far it is a slower aspect. It's costly as well to some extent, the fact that you keep things synchronized in a large network. So I believe that so far I wouldn't be recommending using a DLT, a blockchain type of technology within a trusted network, especially if it's a smaller one, So although I've seen cases for this, it would be in larger situations, it would be in a kind of arm's length trust where we know each other, yes, but I'm still not going to trust you fully, kind of thing. And at the end of the day, I think there is this other benefit that even though we trust each other, we have peace of mind that nobody else is going to tamper with, because trust at the end of the day comes, we could trust each other, but still things could go wrong, not necessarily through lack of our trust, but other people got involved, for example. So blockchain will help with the immutability, what we call the immutability of certain data. Not once there, it can't change. And of course, that helps in aspects where things are more secure, even in a trusted environment. So to come back to your question, I think what is key at this early stage is analyzing each and every situation. I would, most importantly, not jump onto the bandwagon simply because it's a blockchain, especially because there are downsides to the blockchain. To some extent, again, contrary to popular belief, it's costly to run if you don't need to, because compared to depending on what you're doing. Of course, it will not be costly if you're trying to transfer money to, for example, Africa, which is very costly today, and therefore there would be a business case. But there are business cases where already it's not costly, and therefore introducing a technology which is on multiple nodes and multiple parties running it would be an overkill. So I would say at this early stage, one needs to look at each business case and study it with what today ironically would call traditional technologies, I guess, compared to using blockchain.
I think that one of the features of blockchain is that at the moment it is secluded to those people that are technically savvy. Many people who are not savvy might find blockchain a little bit too abstract to understand. Although, is there a reason why you should understand how it works? We don't really everyone understand how a car works, but we still drive a car. How do you think that this can be abridged, especially in an era where everyone seems to be investing in blockchain, in cryptos, in blockchain-powered products, so on and so forth? How do you think the future will be will map in this direction?
First of all, it's disruptive. So even people like myself, we every day we learn things. Every day we get a new moment where we say, so this is how we could do things with it. Unfortunately, you're absolutely right. I think it's a process. How to bridge it? I think at the moment this has come at an era where we are well connected, where there is a lot of where people have an opinion and show it, and sometimes automatically we see a lot of noise around blockchain from people who don't understand it, but then don't do it justice. I think one of the biggest problems of blockchain has been the fact that there is a lot of people talking about it, not understanding it well enough, and therefore creating a bit of wrong understanding of the situation. However, and this would create a situation where people would say, it's not for me, it's I'm not going to. It's too early,
too difficult to
and
understand.
it's too difficult to understand. Where in reality, like any other technology, as you said, we don't need. I wrote a blog once where I said you don't need to be an electrician to switch on the light. Absolutely, the best technologies are those that hide in the background, but you need to write them well. So you need technical people who understand it well, which are very rare. And as I said, everybody, even the ones that are call themselves experts, would still be learning a lot of things. For example, how tokenomics works. There's so many things that are still evolving and still coming out through discussions and through new opportunities in terms of and challenges, right? That new ways of using this technology are emerging. But in order to bridge this, I think we need to try to attract people that don't understand this technology, who understand the real life problem, and talk to tech-savvy people in order to combine a solution. So I think the problem would be in tech-savvy people keeping it for themselves, I think this is what's happening with a number of ICOs, with a number of startups. I've seen that a number of startups have a lot of technical people, but not people coming from the industry.
Okay.
Where in reality, and therefore the solution, I think immediately you would realize that the solution would not be addressing, I guess, wholly the problem itself. So you need a combined team, and with combined teams, you'll achieve whatever you want, and therefore it's not so important to understand the technology. It's important to have an open mind and to team up with the right people.
Okay. You've touched on the subject of tokens. Are tokens needed for blockchain and the various types of tokens? I mean, currently there is a prevailing, rather than prevailing, an emerging kind of token, the token of equity, which is recently there was one of the first companies to issue equity capital through blockchain. Does blockchain need a token?
No, the proper answer is no, it doesn't need a token, and I think there are projects that try and go and improve this. So the technology itself doesn't work because of a token. However, I think the token is very unique to the blockchain, and I think it is an important aspect of many of the solutions that will be resolved with the blockchain. So again, you need to look at the problem in itself. Certainly, there are a lot of currency tokens out there purely for speculation, purely to raise funds. But there is a big use for these tokens because they have, if we look at them as, if we compare them to traditional currency, they have a capability of behaving very differently. You can allow them to behave in various ways online that fiat currency would never have that capability. So they have parameters that you can control online that otherwise would not give you that feature that fiat currency does not give you in terms of features. So tokens are important in order for an ecosystem to be able to work. As it grows, trusted parties are able to transfer or trade without without the use of fiat currency or without the use of an intermediary effectively.
It also helps to ensure that the purpose is fulfilled as well through...
Exactly. So there are multiple tokens. If we discuss tokens is a very interesting subject. Many tokens are designed differently, and I think new ones will emerge. As you said, now there's this very, very new aspect of security token. The project I'm working on, we're working on the security token. I've studied what is emerging. There is one or two, very few, but I've looked at these security tokens, and I don't like everything that they've come up with, and so this is part of the fun bit, but this is where experience counts. I would imagine. I've been involved in an IPO traditionally, and I see what investors want, how they want to see their investment grow, and what they want in return for it. And so if you issue a security token, and you all of a sudden have a different audience, or a different target audience, who investor kind. So far, we've seen these currency tokens, most of them in the ICOs, that I believe the trend has been, the trait was, people just want to buy them because they're cheap to some extent, and maybe with a bit of money they can grow. Purely, most of them on speculation, but really they have very little behavior related to traditional investment. If you move now to a security token, in reality, a blockchain-based token, security token, has many more features and better features from a security perspective, from a behavioral perspective, than a normal token. Than a listed share, right? So we can do much more with a security token. However, then there is a balance between the fact that it is unregulated, and therefore people need to establish new rules for them because they have new features, they have new capabilities, and some would go astray. But then you have the capability of adding features to a traditional, to attract traditional investors in seeing that this token behaves in a way that they are familiar with. And I think this is another aspect of bridging. You need to bridge technology by allowing it first to not go overboard. Although the technology itself is disruptive, you shouldn't use it if the market is not ready for disruption. You should use it in order to prove the technology works, in order to allow the maturity to the technology to mature, because as I said, it is an immature technology, and even the most experienced people on blockchain will have problems that nobody has solved before. While a mature product and technology, you look at a problem and say, okay, if you wouldn't have experienced it, a lot of other people would have experienced a similar situation, and they know how to solve it through previous experience. This is not the case with blockchain. With blockchain, we're seeing problems that are new, and we need to solve them for the first time. And of course, there are solutions that work and solutions that don't work, and sometimes it's by trial and error. So in my opinion, you should go and provide solutions in the beginning, even though you're using technology that can do much more. But first, try and address the problems in a manner that is understood by the current thinking, and then slowly evolve that into something that does much more. So comparing it to the security token, I think what I'm trying to do is issue a security token that behaves as much as possible as a traditional listed, including all the rules and regulations. We know that when it comes to investment, there are many rules and regulations. You need to be encompassing of all jurisdictions as much as possible, because this is another aspect. You do not list in a jurisdiction, but you kind of list globally. Yet every country would have rules, ideally, around how an investment should behave and what it should meet. If you stay purely on the blockchain, so far many countries unfortunately are not legislating, and people stay on the blockchain in order to avoid this legislation. I want to do it the other way around, be able to meet that legislation. Unfortunately, we are in Malta, and at the moment we still don't have a legislation, but very advanced on this aspect. But without legislation, then there will be the rogue players who will harm the technology itself, while I believe that technology should be used, of course, to improve way of living and not risk or create criminal aspects. But this is very minimal overall, and unfortunately, it is what, however, hits the news.
Touching on hashing, I mean, hashing is a central concept within the blockchain technology. What is the purpose of hashing exactly in the blockchain ecosystem?
Hashing is a very clever algorithm that existed way before blockchain. Essentially, it is, in simple terms, it's taking any digital input. Let's take a file or a text string, and you convert it into a fixed length string, output in a string. And so whatever you pass through this algorithm, through this hash, you always end up with a fixed length string. The beauty of it is that if something changes at the input level, the hash will change. You never get the same hash. And that is hashing. Applied, however, we've seen it applied in beautiful ways. We've seen it applied before the blockchain, mostly in checksums, what we call checksums, which is making sure that the file didn't change. So, going on with this example, so because you always get a different hash depending on the input, if you change slightly the input, the hash will be different. The beauty of it, you say, I have the two files and I will check which one is correct. Of course, we're talking about very large files. The beauty of the best advantage of it is you take very large files, you condense them into a 256 normally, or depending on the algorithm, there are various lengths, 512 different lengths of hash outputs.
There's a 256, right?
Yes,
right.
Blockchain uses 256. So you end up with a 256 byte long string, which if the file changes, you end up with a different one. So rather than comparing two large files, for example, the video of this conversation, if somebody adds something to it, it will end up in a large file, this video. But if you want to make sure it never changes, you simply hash it, and then if you send it to somebody else, they pass it through the hash, and you set the hash as well. And if the hash is not matching, then of course the file would have changed. The video would have changed. And the beauty of this would be the speed of being able to compare two strings of 256 byte length, as opposed to having to go through a video or having tools to compare different kinds of files, because then again you have different types of files. It could be an audio file, an MP3 file, an MP4 file, or a simple Word file or a text file, and it's the ability to speed up the comparison. So this ends up in being able to make sure files are not changing, and therefore securing basically the internet. So hashing is key, and it is a core aspect of the blockchain. Each block, or rather each set of transactions in a blockchain, transactions are effectively the data that are put into the hash. Ultimately they end up in a 256 length string that is sealing a block. The next block in the blockchain would be including that hash. So if somebody changes something in a previous block, the blocks that come after would not match. So, but one would say you could change all of them, right? And that's true. And this is why private blockchains will work, in my opinion, a bit less, because you could end up changing all the computers and changing. If it's a small network, you could have the resources to reapply all of this. So the whole concept is in having a large network which has a copy of these hashes effectively, and if somebody changes anything, then you need to update all of the nodes. If it's a small network, you'd probably be able to do that, and therefore that network is not trusted. If it's a large network, it's close to impossible. Again, because ultimately computing this hash will take some time, and therefore recomputing all of these nodes with large data, and it will take too much time. It will take too much effort. I come from the payments background, and we all know, we all see the experience that hackers would attack the point of least resistance. So if you have something that is on the blockchain that is hackable, nothing is impossible to hack, but it is much harder to hack for various reasons. One of them is this. Or a file which is central, a database which is central, holding numerous, huge amount of data, and that it is sitting on a flawed operating system. The hacker would rather attack that one than the other one. The more you secure, then the harder it will become for the hacker to find aspects, but they will go usually to the point of least resistance.
Related to this, do you foresee that there needs to be also some technical changes to the infrastructure to support a fuller implementation of the blockchain technology?
Yes, certainly. I think we're seeing a lot of technology purely on the platform aspect on this blockchain. As we've seen emerging technologies, different ways of implementing a blockchain. The most popular ones being, of course, the Bitcoin blockchain and the Ethereum one. The Ethereum one, I think, has done an incredible aspect of being able to support smart contracts. Both, however, are still relatively slow and unscalable, to some degree. So there are a number of other ones that address this, even using slightly different technologies. And of course, you need, in order for them to fulfill, however, a pure blockchain, they need to be well dispersed and well mined, what we call mining. There are various aspects of mining, and unless you mine these blocks, your transaction is going to remain sitting there and not being accepted. So yes, the infrastructure is the acceptance of an emerging platform for this blockchain. No doubt there is plenty of space for various platforms out there, no doubt for that. But as I came to implement my project as well, originally I thought of considering a closed loop, a trusted one, and then instantly realized that this defeats the purpose, in my opinion, of an autonomous network, one that should not be interfered with, especially because even if you dream or if you think that you're going to have a large enough network eventually to reach that point where it becomes truly mutable, it's going to take time, and that time is precious. In the first transactions, are they going to be trusted? Because you're going to start with a network which is small, and so the transactions that happen on it or data that goes on it could be tampered with, and then you might realize at a later stage, and then what happens? You built a network or a blockchain on something that now is not trusted, because in the early days it wasn't trusted. So yes, I think from an infrastructure perspective, I'd like to see many more blockchain platform initiatives, many more people becoming a node for the blockchain effectively.
Does it need any special computing power there?
If you want to make money, I mean, this aspect of buying specialized mining machines has been a craze, and yes, there are specialized machines. So one aspect is to mine, but those are purely so that because there is an incentive in mining or in solving the problem in order to close a block, and you're given a token in return, depending on what you're mining. This has become big business. Miners actually float from one blockchain model to another, platform to another, depending on who's paying most and how likely it is that you do mine a block, with less power. So they move on, they shift. I think we're moving to different models than to mining and to paying for this mining. So I think the more people would use their computers for this, the lower the price. Certainly the price would be lower, the incentives would be lower, and we need to move towards a different way of ensuring that the blockchain is consolidated and mined kind of. There are various ways, we'll not go into them now, but there are various new ideas on how to ensure that a blockchain is consolidated, not necessarily through mining and getting back tokens in return for mining this.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but implicitly this means that we need to do a better job at educating the market so that more and more users act as nodes through their machines, so that of course then the cost will go down of the blockchain technology itself, making it more accessible.
I don't think it's necessarily the duty of the consumer, of the people out there to take that role, right? I think certainly there is a lot of unused computer power. If it's left switched on, I think it should be used, and we're seeing many concepts of using this power for various things, such as storage. The ability to store your files on a blockchain is a wonderful idea. To use unused disk space on multiple machines that are anyway being left switched on for this purpose. So I don't think it's about education. I think it's about innovative ideas and incentivizing consumers to use them, but then more importantly, I think it's businesses at the end of the day that shift their infrastructure to a blockchain-based one, and they become nodes themselves.
Okay. I regard blockchain as a volcano, no? So it has been around for quite a while, but it has been more in the public eye in the past year or two, maybe. And it's a volcano that is erupting, but we don't know whether there's a bigger explosion, meaning a bigger discovery, as you put it, in the blockchain ecosystem around the corner. As you said, the industry is immature in itself because it is a novel application. Where do you foresee that some element of consolidation will start to happen, where the ecosystem will be a little bit more stable from this point of view?
Well, already I think we've seen a number of applications that are clever, that are very innovative, that are disruptive, and of course, money has been put into them. Now, so there is enough money, I believe, to be able to develop these applications. There is enough interest in order to take them to the next level. We are seeing, I was reading recently, we are still seeing a huge amount of ICOs out there, a huge amount of ideas. Of course, many of them, unfortunately, are either a copy or not necessarily well thought through. But it's easy, for those people who are afraid of this, I think it's really easy to identify, a flop from something that could be big. Again, it's still a risk because you need everything is driven by acceptance and by the fact that users will take it up, right? This is the main aspect. So when will it consolidate? Like everything, and I think it's the use of a killer app. The fact that something all of a sudden we actually didn't know we needed this, right? Then we start to use something and we can't live without it, okay. Right? So I've seen many ideas out there that sound like this. To me, for example, this idea of sharing storage in a highly secure way. This idea is not new, but nobody trusted it before the blockchain. I would trust it with the blockchain because the file is not only encrypted and hashed, but it's split into multiple nodes and you don't know where it is. So if somebody does hack a node, they will get pieces of a file which is hacked at the end of the day, and you can't make, it's like picking up half papers from a shredder kind of thing. Which, as I said, will require huge effort. So this is a great idea because we all know how storage is becoming key, and therefore using the blockchain for this aspect, being able to use all of this storage out there, which is unused, I think is a great idea. All of it will be easily accessible from your mobile phone, and therefore it becomes accessible to many more people. A lot of people don't have laptops, don't have computers. If we talk about even emerging economies, they would have a smartphone, and therefore they are going to become the early adopters of this technology. So now all of a sudden, and this is key again in my project, I'm looking very much at emerging economies, one of them being the continent of Africa. And when I discuss this with people, they tell me, why Africa? And the easy answer is, why not? But the real answer is because, like we've seen, again talking about the payments, we've seen the East Europe being advanced when we had the EMV in payments. There was this new technology. The East European countries did not have a payment platform. When they started to enter this market, they implemented the newest technology, while the West banks, the West countries, had an old platform, and it was much harder to upgrade to the new technology. Similarly, this is what will happen with blockchain. It will be much easier for those countries that don't have the technology at the moment, but all of a sudden they have smartphones, and they will be very keen to adopt a technology that would otherwise, maybe the Western world is comfortable using a current application which uses traditional technology, right? So this is even in a situation where you're using an application, but it's mostly built for laptops or for central database, while the same thing is now available much better on a mobile phone. Now you've made it accessible to a market that before could not access it. So I think this is the trick, and therefore it will be adopted. We will see adoption soon of it. But again, the trick must be, as I said, maybe implementing something that is known, that is that can be understood on a newer technology. As soon as that new technology is adopted, then you move very quickly to implement new ideas. Exactly. People trust it. People will see what other things can be done with it.
Okay. Finally, because of course we can continue discussing this ad infinitum, but of course one thing that is being discussed, and you touched upon it briefly, is the question of regularization of the blockchain technology. Do you think that we will move towards a direction where every country will have its own regulation? It seems that we're moving in that direction. But the spirit of blockchain is to have one unified, rather than having every country having its own regulation. What direction do you think that such regulations will take eventually? I mean,
no, I do believe that there will be unification.
There will.
People will, governments see the purpose of this. Certainly, for example, we are in Europe, and therefore European Union will take a central approach to this. I think it's also close with the other emerging ones in terms of, or the leading ones actually, talking about other countries in Europe that are not in the European Union, talking about the States. There is similarity. However, it's all very new, and so they will need to learn from each other. And it's very hard to control where certain, the jurisdiction of this. I think we're seeing some problems with regards to, for example, the recent GDPR, where it specifically speaks about the data protection, or even of somebody who is, it starts to talk about cross-border. It talks about people who are outside, are non-Europeans, but have their data on a European server or business, or a European who has his data outside of Europe. It's extending to this is new in my opinion. I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that this talk of cross-border coming through the GDPR is, of course, a preamble of things to come. And we also are seeing that one of the largest costs at the moment is regulatory compliance, what we call RegTech, and there's a huge emerging business related to what we call RegTech, which is important. And I think one of the important aspects is to make this easier. And I think governments want to make it easier, in my opinion. I agree with regularization, with regulatory compliance, with mostly the ability to have a regulated environment in order for people to interconnect and to be able to use systems freely. And therefore, that usually happens within a country, but that will work much better if the laws are similar in various jurisdictions. So I think that will happen, that there will be consolidation. I don't know, or at least it will be my appeal, that people will learn, or jurisdictions will learn from each other and try to build similar legislation in this respect.
A unified approach.
Yes.
Godwin, thanks for your time, for sharing these really good insights about blockchain and the future of technology. I don't know whether you have any concluding remarks. Other than that, we really thank you for your time.
Thank you.